I like to think that IMO found me, but I just think fate. I was always meant to be here somehow.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast listeners, and welcome to the 115th episode of the Shipping Podcast. As many of you know, I am a woman in the maritime industry. I am a long-standing member of VISTA, that is, Women's International Shipping and Trading Association. So the IMO theme for this year, empowering women in the maritime industry, fits me like a glove. I wanted to find out more about the reasons behind the theme and what will happen next year when the theme will be something else. So I decided to go to London and sit down and talk with the person behind the IMO program on diversity, Helen Buni, who works at the Technical Cooperation Division at IMO and is the focal point for the program Women in Maritime. I did that on May the 2nd, 2019, and here is our chat. Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning. My name is Helen Buni. I am the IMO focal point for the Women in Maritime program here at the Technical Cooperation Division.
And what is your background?
So my background, I have a legal background. I trained to be a lawyer. That was what I always aspired to. I didn't have any passion for maritime or any background in maritime. I guess you could say I was one of the ignorant people that didn't really think about how the goods on my table had actually got there. Didn't really equate no shipping, no shopping, so to speak, like I do now. And the fact that 98% of the world's trade is carried by sea. But I kind of think, so I would say I fell into the maritime world when I was born, and I guess I shouldn't reveal my age. A lady never reveals her age. I was born in Baghdad, Iraq. And at the time I was born, my father was actually here in London at IMCO, which was then IMO back in the day. So I kind of feel it was always fated when I made an appearance in the world, somehow that I would end up here in IMO headquarters. But it's happenstance. There was no... I went travelling in 2003 and decided when I came back to look for some temping work using either my legal background or languages, and fell into the world of IMO and have been here ever since. I started initially doing contracts for consultants, and eventually I found sort of areas of interest within the maritime sector that appealed to me. I actually did my third year work placement at Maritime Law Firm in Barcelona, and I didn't really enjoy it. I have to say, I really struggle with finding things that I could sort of get passionate about. So now I'm very lucky in the role that I do. I've been able to combine my passion, what I enjoy doing, with a career which is very varied and very fortunate, I guess. Yeah, you weren't expecting that, were you? Yeah. I like to think that IMO found me, but I just think fate. I was always meant to be here somehow. The fact that, my father was here in the UK as part of the Iraqi delegation. He was signing a declaration at the time on behalf of the Iraqi delegation. He was a satellite engineer. And the fact that I was, come full circle and I'm here today, I think is quite a sort of an interesting story.
Yes, it is. So for us who doesn't really know the IMO, it's so complex.
Yeah.
So what is your title? What do you do today? What is your responsibility?
So up until the end of 2018, I was working, I had like a dual portfolio, if you like. So one aspect was IMO's Women in Maritime program. It's a program that's been running now for 31 years. And it is a very varied program, and it incorporates many aspects, not in terms of just SDG implementation, but also training opportunities for women in the maritime sector. When you think maritime, you don't necessarily think women. And I feel that my role isn't about giving women the opportunity to speak out, but actually to, letting them be listened to, but also to giving them a platform where they have access to these training opportunities. There are training opportunities out there. They just don't necessarily know how they can seek support. The other side of my portfolio was working with the donors. So I'm very lucky that over the years, I've established some fantastic relationships with our donors, who are very supportive of our gender initiatives, which has worked great because I've been able to work alongside them and find exciting projects to fund our capacity building activities. Unfortunately, funding hasn't kept pace with the trend over years. I've got 150 applications for women in port management activities, and yet, I only have 30 spaces available. So it's trying to marry the two things, the donor side of things and seeking resources, but also giving visibility to what IMO is doing. Most people, when they think of IMO, many people haven't heard of IMO outside the maritime community. They're not aware that IMO, there is a UN specialised agency in London. They're not aware that there's a UN presence here in London, which I guess works both ways. But it's about, raising the profile of women as a key resource and saying, hey, don't disregard 50% of the talent pool. That's what it's about. It's not about, there's this misconception that we're trying to advocate for taking jobs away from the men. When it's not about that. It's about networking. It's about access to training opportunities. It's about saying the bottom line, that female empowerment is an economic no-brainer. So why are we not looking at ways to diversify the workforce, our working environment?
Did you get the job because you are a woman?
I'm not sure. I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I'd like to think it was because I was competent.
I know, but I was just asking. Because in some way, I think that maybe people think that it's the women's responsibility to get empowered, which I think is the wrong way around.
Absolutely. We need male champion. The reality is shipping is male dominated. Shipping was male dominated in 2003 when I joined. Things have changed. We do have internally within IMO more directors on the senior management committee. We have 3 directors out of 7. We're seeing more chairs of the committees, of the subcommittees, which is fantastic. We're seeing more female delegates attending IMO meetings and talking about technical issues, not there in a secretarial capacity. Within the secretariat, we're seeing more women in professional categories. I mean, there's so much more to be done. But the truth of the matter is, did I sort of fall into the role? I had a fantastic mentor who ran the IMO's gender program for many years, Pamela Tanzi. She's very well known. And I sort of, over the last 10 years, have been mentored by her, if you like, to sort of take on the program. But then there's a sort of, the culture within IMO still needs to do a lot of work in terms of their succession planning. There isn't really that structure in place. What I'm trying to say is, yes, I like to think I got the job because I was competent, but there is an element of, oh, I'm a woman, I fit the role, hey, give it a go. But so far it's working.
I know. We are grateful and we support you. But I mean, what are the biggest challenges that you see, or what are the most common arguments that why should we do this? Why empowering women in the maritime industry for this year?
I wish there wasn't a need to keep having the same conversation about the need for more women, the need for more women in the maritime sector. But at the end of the day, for me, it goes back to the notion that for the maritime industry to meet the challenges, the ever demanding challenges of global trade and carrying the world's goods, it needs all hands on deck. And it makes economic sense to have equal access to training opportunities for women. I mean, personally, from a point of view of personal challenges, I would say trying to get the information out there. So we have 7 associations for women in maritime that we've established in Africa, Asia, Caribbean, Latin America, and the Pacific. I hope I'm not leaving anyone out. I don't think I am. And through these associations, it's the work that they do at the grassroots level that I'm so proud of. They go to schools and talk about sexual health. They talk about hygiene. They talk about mitigation of climate change. They go and do beach cleanups. They go and talk to the communities about gender-based violence. They go to raise awareness about HIV prevention. From their own pocket, they go to orphanages. They go to schools. It's this outreach, and it all stems to the fact that they're part of a network. They're part of a community. To know that you're not alone, I think is really important. And I guess for me, it's that work that's done in the communities. It's changing people's lives. And, that's what one element of the program is about. Training, visibility, recognition, giving recognition to the fantastic role models that we have in the industry, trying to give them recognition, trying to get more women in leadership, in decision-making roles, trying to help them, climb through the ranks. Also, one thing that I would, really like to emphasize as well is we've recently been working on the social media. So social media in terms of giving the program more visibility. The program's been going for 31 years, and yet we don't really have a brand or an identity. So that's why we launched a new logo in February this year. We've been working more and more with other entities such as WISTA, Women in Shipping Trade Association, because for so many years we've been working in our little silos, speaking to the same audience about the same things, the same challenges, and not really progressing. If it's going to take 202 years to close the gender pay gap, there's things that we can be done to try and move things further, to move it from just having the dialogue and the conversation to actually establishing practical tools and solutions that we can maybe move the agenda forward, so that we're not talking about this and that we have more women represented. The fact that in the last 25 years, we're still talking about the same number of women in the maritime sector. Or are we? Who knows? Because we don't have the data.
No, we don't. Which is why I'm proud to say that IMO and Vista is going to do a joint venture to try and find out.
But it's so important, because how can you measure how far you've come if you have no baseline data? One of the practical outputs to emanates from this year's theme, not just to have discussions about the need for greater participation of women, and to talk about, women in the maritime sector, to highlight the visibility, to highlight all the amazing things that have been done, is to actually have a practical output to say, we're going to have this data, we're going to know, or have an idea at least. We're talking about, 1.2% of women in the maritime sector, but we don't know. We just don't know. So the idea being that we're going to do a comprehensive analysis of the number of women that we are talking about.
And then we will probably count the men as well. Because who did that?
Well, exactly. But perhaps not in the year of empowering women.
No, but the project will go on for a while.
Yes, absolutely. And again, once we have the data, we need to review it periodically.
Yes.
So that we have actual indicators that we can refer to and say, okay, we can realistically say that things have improved, that you can't talk about an unrepresented number of women in the industry if we don't know what that number is.
And also we need to see, because my feeling is that there is a lot of young women now entering the industry with the new knowledge that we don't really have yet in our industry. A lot to do with the digitalization and the fourth industry revolution. And I think that's great, because they are representing the new jobs we are getting.
Absolutely. And I think, this is now the time that we need to embrace that. We need to listen to these women, and also we need to retain them.
Yes.
More importantly,
Definitely,
because otherwise we aren't looking at an attractive career for women and men in the sector. We need to retain the expertise of both males and females, and there are many entities out there trying to do that and trying to encourage more males and females, be it from the primary school age, trying to get more girls into STEM subjects. I spend so much of my time trying to get more women on board, trying to get them their sea time, that by the time I do, the ships will be automated. And then there'll be a new discussion. But I hope that time will come.
Yeah. It's interesting. I am so happy I live in these interesting times because there's so many things happening now.
But that's why I think a career in maritime is so diverse, is so interesting. With all this new technology, it's opening up a whole new talent pool a whole new sort of spectrum of jobs that perhaps they move away from the perception of it being male dominated, the sort of caricature of Popeye the Sailor. And, you aren't relying on sort of physical strength, and it's more a different skill set. And I think then that skill set is transferable. My background is a legal background. Never really until recently considered I was a woman working in the maritime sector. How strange is that, considering, I've been doing this since 2003.
Well, I don't know what to say to that. So speaking about the future, how do you see the future for shipping in general?
I mean, how long is a piece of string? I mean, that's a very loaded question. From my perspective, the gender program, in terms of our women's associations, I would like to make sure that they have a good governance in place. Our associations are based on their voluntary support of a number of women, goodwill of number of women, and they're not sustainable unless IMO provides financial support. I would like to see them being sustainable. By that, I mean not having IMO be there to be the only financial sort of donor to support them. I like to see them have a mentorship structure in place. I like to see them just continue to grow. In terms of the portfolio, the gender program, I think this year's World Maritime Day theme gives it a fantastic platform to grow and perhaps acquire new resources, because at the end of the day, the only dedicated person in IMO dealing with gender is myself. And that's not enough. In terms of the maritime industry, I just think there are so many exciting challenges ahead in terms of technology, digitalization, in terms of the way that we're delivering technical assistance. Historically, it's been very much capacity building activities involve people physically being present for a regional conference. But now with online mentorship, with online training platforms, and there's so many other mechanisms now that we can deliver technical assistance so that we can deliver more with the same resources, and we can do more. But in order for any of this to happen, we've got to work with IMO is here to serve the member states, of course, but we've got to work with other stakeholders and make sure that they are on board. We're all speaking to the same audience, and therefore we need to be working together and sharing resources.
So next year, will it be all forgotten then?
No.
Empowering women?
Absolutely not.
It's a new theme, it's a new year, and then move on.
Yeah, and it will be a new theme next year. But I see this year as being the building block to something exciting, to really being change makers together. But in order to press for progress, we have to do it together. We can't be working in silos anymore.
No.
So
isn't that wonderful?
It is exciting.
Yeah.
It really is exciting, because people are waking up with Me Too movement, with, so much in the mainstream media about why it's important to have diversity, that, when you equate it to, you make a business case and say, this is why it's important. People slowly are starting to wake up to now how that impacts on the maritime sector. The maritime sector isn't necessarily doing any better or worse than other sectors, but progress is happening. Perhaps not as quickly as I would have liked, but things are changing for the better. I've seen that in the 15 years or so I've been here at IMO, and I'm excited. We recently had a conference at the World Maritime University on this year's World Maritime Day theme. The conference identified a number of follow-up action, but 6 in particular, one being the need for data on the number of women in maritime. And I see those tools as being now a legacy for what is to come. So yeah, it's a start. The beginning, and much long overdue. But, if there ever was a year that we were going to capitalize and move the program forward, and I'm excited to be part of that change.
Me too. How will the shipping industry or the maritime industry become more visible to the general public?
Social media, the power of social media. I mean, wherever I go, I encourage people to have a physical presence. So for our women's associations, the starting point is a website. IMO's been helping them build websites, have a Facebook profile, a Twitter account. I encourage people wherever they go to put something out to show, because you think shipping, you think regulatory, and you don't necessarily think the humanitarian side of things. How is shipping changing people's lives? I guess one in the general public doesn't really think about the Sustainable Development Goals. And then if you want to improve you can't improve gender equality, SDG 5, without having an impact on the other SDGs. Just continue to grow. Now, in terms of the portfolio, the gender program, I think this year's World Maritime Day theme gives it a fantastic platform to grow and perhaps acquire new resources.
Yeah, but just social media, you can't just start from scratch. You have to have a thought behind what you're going to present.
No, absolutely. But I like to think the premise behind any association or network would have had a vision and an objective in the first place. When IMO's Women in Maritime program started in 1988, its primary objective was because there was no access to training opportunities for women managers. I mean, over the years, it's been less of focus on women managers because we can't get women into those leadership roles. We've been helping them by giving them access to technical training opportunities, short upgrading courses, to not just upskill them, if you like, but also to retain them, I guess. I may add, actually, how can the maritime sector be more visible? We're producing a third gender film, on how women have benefited from IMO's gender program over the years. So showcasing some of the recipients, which is fantastic. And that will be launched in June this year at our forthcoming TCC meeting. But also what I'm most excited about is that we've been showcasing some of the role models, women who have benefited from, for example, studying at the World Maritime University in Malmö in Sweden, or the IMO International Maritime Law Institute in Malta. We're showcasing women who've benefited from our port management courses, on aids to navigation courses. And it's really inspirational hearing their stories and, giving visibility to them, letting both internally people know who has benefited, how that has helped them in their career progression, how knowing that they're not alone, how they've overcome some of the challenges that they've faced in their various roles, how those, I think, through things like that.
But who is the audience to that?
So in terms of all the stakeholders, but also not just within the maritime community, I would say outside of the maritime community. It's really important.
That is where we need to reach out.
Yeah. So slowly we are working towards that. And there's some fantastic campaigns I've seen emerge this year as a result of this year's World Maritime Day theme. The Nautical Institute are running 365 Days of Women. It's a fantastic campaign. I only wish we had the resources here to do something in parallel. And then I think, well, what are we going to do with these 365 profiles? We need to do something with them afterwards. Again, it is to go back to the fact that there is so much being done, and we now need to focus and energize on working together and reaching out to these networks, using our networks, both IMO networks with WISTA, with other partners, to say, okay, this is a career in maritime. This is exciting. This is something that we should encourage others, boys and girls, to join. And it's only through giving visibility and saying, okay, these are the highs, these are the lows, but wow, what an exciting future you potentially could have in this sector.
Did you ever have a role model growing up?
Yes and no. I guess I always saw myself as being. I didn't really know what I eventually wanted to be. I had various role models, but it wasn't. I wouldn't say one in particular. And I wish I did. Now looking back to my younger self, if I had any advice, it would be not to sort of do so much alone. To work with others, to learn from others, to share experiences. Which is why I think now, is why we advocate so much for being part of these networks. They are so important to know that you're not alone, and in order to be energized and progress and share ideas, I think it's so important.
Who do you think I should interview the next? Who would you be interested in listening to in the Shipping Podcast?
I mean, I just say keep doing what you're doing, because it is fantastic, and the male-female ratio of speakers that you have, the diverse range of speakers you have, I can't answer that question. But what I can say is, whoever the lucky individual is, I'm very excited to listen to their views and learn from their views as well. I think to have access to podcasts, to interviews, to various articles that have been written, it only enriches your knowledge. And I think at the end of the day, knowledge is power, and there's room for improvement. Not you, of course, Lena.
Oh.
But yeah, I'd be very interested who you have on next.
You will be surprised.
Have you ever considered having like a dual, sort of a tripartite interview?
Yeah,
having two speakers at the same time?
I just have to buy a new microphone,
Okay.
A third microphone, and then I'm on.
Well, if there's any donors out there that want to support the cause, then please.
Yeah, I am open to suggestions.
Okay.
Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me.
Thank you.
And best of luck, and see you out there.
Thank you,
empowering all the women.
Well, let's have more women at the helm making waves together. Absolutely. And let's press for progress together.
Yeah.
That's what's needed.
It's a deal. Thank you, Helen. I know you do so much for women in the maritime community, and that you have a large fan base supporting you out there. My visit to the IMO made me curious about the people working there and trying to understand what they do, what is happening, and why. So later this autumn, you will be listening to more interviews with people from the IMO. Meanwhile, I am preparing to go on some holiday, but at the same time, I can see things happening with the Shipping Podcast that I have been longing for such a long time. I am speaking to companies who want to partner up with me and make the change the maritime industry needs and sponsor this channel. I also see a huge number of downloads for the previous episodes, especially episode 114 with Captain Kate McHugh. I think this has something to do with the fact that a lot of people want to listen to her, but also that she was generous enough to share the episode on her Instagram account. It's amazing to see how it works. And I'm even more amazed by Captain Kate after having spoken to her boss last week in Stockholm. Yes, I brought my microphone, so you will be able to listen to how Royal Caribbean Cruise Line view gender equality and how they have launched a program to support that. Eventually, I think I will probably have some time off. But until the next time, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a Shipping Podcast available and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.